Hey everyone, Andrew here from The Legal Mindset, and just wanted to come to you with a quick take on the Mohamed Noor resentencing. Now, some basic facts to lay out before we get into the resentencing. Mr. Noor was a Somali police officer who responded to a call, a reported assault, probable rape. A woman was screaming outside of Justine Damon's house. So when he responded to this call, he was about to leave with his fellow officer and he heard a noise on his car, right? So he reached for his gun, shot across his partner's nose, right? So across his partner, and killed fatally Justine Damond, who was an unarmed woman, unarmed Australian woman, blonde, Caucasian individual. Now, this is a really highly contentious case, and we could get back into it. It certainly speaks to a lack of training in the Minnesota area, right? However, when we look at the actual facts, it's interesting for the verdict. And the verdict has an application on the George Floyd case because, number one, it's the same state, but also because, well, George Floyd, in this case, Derek Chauvin, right, who was convicted for the murder of George Floyd, is appealing. Right, he's appealing to the Supreme Court just like Mohamed Noor did. So they're following the same trail of appeals, and therefore there's possible application there. So what happened in Mohamed Noor's case? Well, he appealed all the way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court. They ended up ruling that, in fact, the murder charge, right, the third-degree murder charge, the depraved mind charge, that had to be thrown out. So they threw out that depraved mind charge. They said he lacked that in that case legally. There was no legal basis for that. So that left the highest charge being the second-degree manslaughter charge. Now, under Minnesota law, there's a maximum of 10 years for such a charge. But what actual penalties, what does that involve? Well, here you see I've got the Minnesota statutes pulled up, the 2020 statutes, 609.205. And in this, the maximum punishment for manslaughter in the second degree is imprisonment of not more than 10 years or a fine or payment of $20,000 or both. Now, what's the standard? Well, the standard does not include the intent to kill somebody. You don't have to go out there and intend to kill somebody to get a manslaughter charge. That is very important. Now, yes, this is a lot of time in jail, 10 years, but it's not as much as a murder charge, right? Not as much as a first degree, second degree, or third degree murder charge. That's totally different. And once again, these are totally different penalties. But it just requires the burden of proof is lower. All it requires is the person's culpable negligence, whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances of causing death or great bodily harm to another, right? That is 100% what happened in this case. There's no doubt that happened in this case, right? The whole contention is whether there's a depraved mind for shooting over your partner. Now, that's a really crazy move, right? To just shoot over your partner. Yes, they said they were startled, but it's still pretty crazy. That's contentious. But when you get down to the fact is it negligent? Absolutely. An officer should know, person who's wearing the badge, person who should know how to use a firearm, should know that shooting across somebody to shoot somebody else, which you haven't even confirmed whether or not they're carrying a weapon, yeah, that's negligent. That's negligent. So this clearly is a standard that is met. It's not something that's going to be able to be challenged. You know, there you go. You've got this charge. So what happened with the resentencing? Well, he was resentenced to 57 months in prison. So doing the math on that, because he's already served over 900 days in jail as of date, he's going to get out on 2022, June 27th, 2022. He's eligible for supervised release. So this guy does not have a lot of time left in jail. That is much different than if he was in there on a murder charge, right? He was originally sentenced to 12 and a half years for his third-degree murder charge. Now, they did give him the max sentence possible, right? But once again, people are not happy about this decision. They're saying this is the worst judge ever, right? And they're, disagreeing that this is racially motivated. Now, there's a big contentious issue here because of the races. Now, If this had gone the other way, if this had been a George Floyd-like situation, right, with Derek Chauvin being white, right, and George Floyd being black, this is a flip scenario. We have a black officer and a white woman. And what does it show? Well, it shows poor training in the department and shows unprepared officers, right? Which I think may be a bigger issue here. And that's something that certainly should be talked about and should be looked into, right? Are your officers properly trained, right? But a lot of people don't even know the name of Mohamed Noor, right? This is something that's going on, that's being spoken about in a very small lawyer field, right? Shout out to the others that have covered this. I know Rickada's covered this. Other people have covered this topic, and shout out to those guys because they're amplifying this. But nobody in the mainstream media is covering this topic. And that is what we should be paying attention to here, is that we are not hearing about this topic. We're not hearing about the devastation on the family, how the fiance who was in the same house had to deal with this loss. That is something that's just not echoed out there. And is it solely because of the race of the victim and the perpetrator, the race of the perpetrator? I'm going to leave that out there, right? I'm going to leave that hanging out there because that's a question we need to ask ourselves. And frankly, we can see that if it was exactly reversed, right, there would be more media on this topic. So he will have 57 months. That is the maximum sentence under second-degree manslaughter, which is the maximum charge they have left, really the only charge they have left. Now, could this relate to Derek Chauvin? Well, under the case law, strictly, they could look at Derek Chauvin's case the same way and throw out the higher degree murder charges. They could say, hey, we're going to throw out the murder charges and we're going to stick with the negligence standard. We're going to stick with the manslaughter. That is very possible under the law. But here's the thing I've always said. I don't care if you're a lawyer, a local lawyer, you think you know the law the best. Law is not viewed in a silo. Law never occurs in a silo separated from politics and culture. And the Derek Chauvin case proved that. The court of public opinion found Derek Chauvin was guilty long before the trial. So what are we going to see here? We're going to see that when we actually go to this case, when we look at this case and we're looking at it in the Chauvin context, they're going to try to distinguish this from Derek Chauvin. The talking heads, in addition to everyone out there, when it gets to appeal, they're going to say, look, Chauvin was different because of X and Y. But if you were strictly looking at the law, the same lack of a depraved mind, I think, is an argument that the defense could bring up, that Chauvin's appeal could bring up. And I think if you look at the precedent, this is there, right? This precedent is there in an in a similar circumstance. Not exactly factually the same, but a similar circumstance that Chauvin could rest his hat upon on an appeal. However, politically, culturally, do I think they're going to go that way? Absolutely not. I think that they've proven that they're so afraid of the backlash. They're so afraid of BLM. They're not going to go there. But is it a legal argument? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. Not going to lie to you guys. But want to come here with that hot take. Normally, I don't do these, but I'm going to do a lot more of these because I know you guys want the information and you want it fast. So I'm here to get it to you and get it to you, the community. So hope you like this. I will catch you next time.